Could you support a deal here out of this Gang of Six on the budget that includes tax increases?
Well, we're not talking about it. We're not talking about raising tax rates at all.
All right, but
if there's a net effect of tax revenue, that would be fine with me.
Alan Greenspan was on this program last week. He said the Bush-era tax cuts should expire for everybody. Is that not fair?
So you got to work both sides of the equation. But we did not raise tax rates as this proposal. What we did was have tax reform.
Welcome back to Harvard. That was Republican Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma and Democratic Senator Ken Conrad of North Dakota on Meet the Press yesterday. Can Democrats and Republicans find a way to fix the budget? For former Labor Secretary Robert Rice, a professor at UC Berkeley and author of the new book Aftershock. There it is. And University of Virginia professor Larry Sabato is the author of Pendulum Swing. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on the show. There's something that's really gotten sort of bogged up or clogged up in American politics. That is, you can only adjust one side of the ledger now. That means cutting taxes, cutting spending, and that's all anybody talks about. Look at these new numbers right now. We got a Washington ABC poll you might not be shocked by. 53% opposed even a small tax increase and small cuts in Medicare. It's written as almost minuscule, and it's written as a fair proposition, and people still rejected 53-45. Then you ask people, should we go after socket the people that make most of the money, and it's 3-1 tax people over 72%. Robert Rice, it seems like people don't want any kind of an across-the-board adjustment in anything. They only get excited about hitting people hard who they are not. In other words, I can read a poll to know that most people who respond to this are making less than $250 a year, and they're saying hit the people that do make more. Is this where we're at? We only go after the rich? That's it.
Well, Chris, I thought the most interesting part of that Washington Post ABC poll you're talking about is that 54% of registered Republicans said taxes should be increased on the rich. And now, I haven't seen anything like that for the last 30 or 40 years, and I haven't been following every poll for the last 30 or 40 years, but for years, Republicans have been saying, and most of the public has been believing, that if you cut taxes on the rich, then you get trickle-down economics that benefits everybody, and also, if you increase taxes on the rich, everybody will be hurt because someday everybody's going to be a millionaire. Well, those are two mythologies, and they've both gone out of style and out of fashion. So even Republicans are beginning to say, look, if we have no other choice, let's raise taxes on the rich.
So if that's the voters' opinion, Larry, why isn't it happening? Why do both parties see? We just saw two members of Congress who are supposed to be the guys in the middle cutting the deal. They were gun shy, both of them, any kind of tax increase.
Yeah, because a poll is not an election. That's fundamentally the difference here. Look, the reason Republicans almost universally, not just Tea Party Republicans, but mainstream Republicans oppose any tax increase is because if they do, they are guaranteed not just a Tea Party challenge, they're probably going to be challenged in a primary by another mainstream Republican. And it's gotten to the point where tax increases are now defined, at least by some, like our friend Grover Norquist, as being the elimination of tax subsidies for things like the ethanol industry. So it's getting tougher and tougher even to raise fees and close loopholes and eliminate subsidies.
Well, this is a problem for both parties because, Robert, if you can't get any give from the Republican side on revenues, on taxes, even on an increase in revenue through reform, if you can't do that, it seems to be very hard to get the Democrats to agree to any kind of cut in spending. So the president can't get his own party to do any kind of budget adjustment, any kind of effort to reduce the deficit that's real, if he can't get the other party to increase revenue. So both sides get hurt politically because neither side will move then. Is that where we're at? Nobody wants to do anything because nobody's doing everything.
Chris, if you assume that compromise lies exactly halfway between the president's proposal and Paul Ryan's proposal, then yes, you are stymied. You're completely stymied. But if the public, and I think a lot of Republicans and not a few Democrats are getting a lot of news when they go home right now at town meetings, when the public actually registers what they want, no cut in Social Security or Medicare, and do tax the rich, and let's get rid of corporate welfare, let's pare down military spending. When so many representatives are hearing that in their town meetings, you might actually see a greater willingness to compromise when they come back.
Well, I see that don't touch Medicare. I don't see the excitement about raising taxes. Do you hear it, Larry?
No,
for the rich.
I'm with you,
I mean,
Chris.
do they actually demand it at meetings?
Well, I don't know what people are saying in their meetings. I doubt that's what the Republican members are hearing. And remember, it would have to pass the Republican House. Look, there's only one open window for a compromise, and that is, well, Bob mentioned corporate welfare. I think Republicans would say, as Senator Coburn did, closing loopholes, tax reform. That may be a way to produce some kind of compromise. But if you're talking about a general increase in tax rates, forget about it. Not going to happen.
Well, Larry, I completely agree with Larry on that. No general increase in tax rates. But what we're talking about is increasing taxes on the rich, not only getting rid of the extension of the Bush tax cut for people over $250,000, but also, for example, capping home mortgage interest deductions, maybe, $20,000 a year. I mean, there are a lot of things that can be done that would get, in my view, a great deal of public support.
But you're not running for anything, Robert. And Larry, you're not running for anything. And I think Larry made the point
Definitely
a minute ago,
not.
which I thought was crisply stated. There's a difference between a poll and an election. If all you have to do is expose yourself as a Republican to any kind of problem with the voters, they'll kill you on it. The Republicans will be Tea Partying you. The Democratic side, they'll get you on Medicare. So I am afraid that the solution politically for these crowd of people in politics today is do nothing. Let the deficit ride. Robert, don't you think that's what's going to happen, really? They're just going to let this deficit balloon, and they're not going to do anything about it.
Chris, always the path of least resistance is to do nothing. But if the dollar continues to drop, if we see that it's not just Standard & Poor's, but capital markets become very afraid that the Democrats and Republicans are doing nothing, then their hands may be forced. They may have to do something. And then the question is, what are they going to cut, or what tax are they going to raise? And I think if you're going to raise any taxes at all, it's got to be on the rich.
I don't see any leadership out there from either party in cutting a deal. Larry, what about Haley Barbour quitting? I thought he might be able to thread the needle. He might be, to use another metaphor, a Tea Party appealing person, but without being a Tea Party person. But what do you think? Why did he quit?
Chris, I think he's one of the smartest politicians in either party, and he just proved it today. He wasn't selling, and he picked it up. He wasn't selling because of the D.C. lobbyist thing, because of the Mississippi connections, because of his accent and looks. And he decided, I think rather sanely, that he didn't want to go through this tortured presidential selection process for nothing.
So now there's only a couple left. There's only Jeb and maybe Christie. Who's the odd side? Who's the what do you call it, the dark horse for you? Who's going to come in this race and win it on the Republican side? Anybody?
Yeah. I doubt anybody comes in, but the person who just keeps being mentioned is Chris Christie, and he loves it no matter what he's saying.
I agree with you completely on that. Robert Rice, Chris Christie, what do you think? Big surprise.
Yes,
he's a Wendell Willkie of 2012.
I think he could be a very strong candidate, but don't take your eyes off Mitt Romney. He looks the part. He acts the part. He has gleaming white teeth. He is the kind. Now, wait a minute. I know the public is very concerned about Mormonism.
You are setting this guy up. Duller than you can imagine.
Mitt Romney is an empty. Well, Chris, I'm not a supporter of Mitt Romney. I think he's a very strong candidate. I mean, Mitt Romney is an empty suit. I think, in fact, to say
heard what
that
I said, didn't you, the other day?
Insults suits.
He gives empty suits a bad name. Anyway, thank you, Robert Rice. Thank you, Larry Sabato. You're just setting this guy up. An arse on a golden horse is what you want.